So I want to talk to you about this. You're probably already aware of this, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. The Union of Musicians and Allied Workers, they have a nation or a worldwide action today. It's happening today. And here's what they're saying: help us demand that Spotify pay 1 cent per stream, open Spotify's books, and stop targeting artists with lawsuits. We will be delivering our demands to Spotify in a worldwide demonstration on March 15th. Now, here's some more details. We're going to go straight to their website here because it gives the details on all the cities involved. And for anyone who might not realize this, they're saying 1 cent per stream. You might kind of be doing a double take on that. But the reality is, Spotify pays less than 1 cent per stream. They pay fractions of pennies for downloads. So here's what their website says. This is the Union of Musicians. Join us March 15th at 1 p.m. for our worldwide Justice at Spotify Day of Action. You can register below to get to the closest demonstration near you. Here's the cities in the U.S. Atlanta, Birmingham, Michigan. Birmingham, Michigan, I've never heard of. I don't know if they mean Alabama. That's like a town in Michigan. Boston, Mass, Chicago, Illinois, Dallas, Texas, Los Angeles. I've heard of it. Miami, Nashville, New York, San Francisco. And then around the world, we got Amsterdam, Antwerp, Berlin, Mexico, Denmark, Germany, couple places in Germany, London, baby, Madrid, Paris. I'm not going to read all of them, but Milano, Italy, shout out to Milano, and of course, Toronto, Canada, Australia, all kinds of wonderful places. David, were you aware of this?
Yeah, I've been following it. I mean, I've been they're doing basically exactly what I have been wanting to do for years, and I started a sort of a well, it's basically I wouldn't call it a campaign. I just call it a website, davidrovix.com/penny, which is the Penny Campaign for Streaming Justice, which is what I called it, which is never really got off the ground as a sort of campaign, but just as a concept of the idea that I had, which is obviously an idea that lots of other people had, which is to take on Spotify, which is the dominant platform in music streaming for a variety of vulture capitalist reasons. And they take them on and try to demand that they pay a penny per play, just because that, as a beginning to a campaign, as an idea, that is a good place to start, where people can understand what you're asking for, and they can also understand how outrageous it is that they pay less than that. So I think what they're doing, this idea is fantastic, and I believe the list of cities that you've got there is basically a list of the cities where Spotify has an office. And I don't know what kind of, and unfortunately Portland is not one of them. Otherwise I would have signed up to be at the protest in Portland, but there isn't one. I think the nearest office to Portland is San Francisco, surprisingly enough. But the one thing I have discovered with this union is, unfortunately, I mean, not to say anything negative about it, but I have been completely unable to get in touch with anybody at the union. Like, I mean, I got on their email list and I follow them on Twitter, but you can't message them on Twitter, and I have been unable to get through to any organizers to interview them for my show.
Well, some of the folks that are heavily involved is Max and John from Eve 6, and they've been on this show before. I'd be happy to loop you in. Yeah,
I'd love to get in touch. I'd love to be in touch with anybody involved with the campaign to talk to them, but they don't answer their email, so that's kind of unfortunate. Or maybe it's the NSA interfering with our emails, but I've emailed a couple times gotten no response. But so I guess they are maybe getting too much. Too many emails from excited musicians who want to participate in the campaign to be able to respond to them all. I hope
so. Absolutely. I mean, it's really, I think it's great to see. I wish there was some sort of union activity. I was actually talking about this on the show yesterday during my Patreon stream, where I was just wondering, I know at some point comedians tried, allegedly, this was before my time, but at some point they tried for a comedians union. It just straight up sort of fell flat on its face. And I don't know if that's ever a type of thing we'd be able to organize. I wish it were a possibility, but I just don't know how something like that could be orchestrated in the stand-up world.
I mean, I could imagine how it could be organized, but but basically somebody has to be paid to be doing that. I mean, that's the problem with these efforts, as with many other sort of smaller union efforts, whether it's around musicians organizing, like gig workers organizing of one kind or another, or whether it's around housing unions or things like that. Sometimes different unions like SEIU will fund an initiative, which is great, and it involves a full-time paid employee for a time, and then you'll hear a lot about that going on, whether it's a group like here in Oregon called We Are Oregon, which was very much involved with housing issues for some years, or any number of other initiatives, and then they die out when they stop getting the union funding because there's no longer a full-time employee, and as a volunteer operation, it just can't function. So I think that's one of the perennial problems, and I don't know if it's going to be a problem with this union initiative around Spotify. I hope that there is some musicians union in the world somewhere that has the brains to understand that even though Spotify, that organizing against Spotify is not going to do anything for the symphony musicians doing the soundtracks for the TV shows, which are the musicians that the unions actually care about. But it's not going to affect them, but it'll affect most of the musicians in the world who actually make a living as musicians or used to make a living as musicians. It'll affect us, but there's nothing in it for the musicians union, so they don't care because it's basically a mafia.
Right, you're saying the existing musicians
The
union,
existing old
not the
boys club
union.
of musicians. Not this one,
Right.
not this one. I know nothing about this one. All I know is that they don't answer their email. So I question whether they have any full-time employees, and I question their sustainability in the future. But their idea of what they're doing is fantastic, and I hope that it can be sustainable, and I hope they can manage to start answering their emails, and I hope that they can do some real organizing, because they have a great website, but that's only the first step.
Sure. Well, and this is a nice first step too. Getting on Spotify for a little bit. Do you remember when the CEO at Spotify, great guy, do you remember when he issued that statement where he told all the musicians, "Hey, you don't think we're paying you fairly for your work? Make more music. Make more music for me to exploit." Do you remember that? How'd you feel?
I mean, it was just the most outrageous thing to say. It's like, it's like saying, I mean, it is exactly like the boss at a factory saying to all the workers who are making T-shirts and the sweatshop, you don't feel like you get paid enough. Make more T-shirts, as if they're not going to start paying less per T-shirt when they start making more T-shirts, because it's not like each T-shirt sells a certain amount. The Spotify, the whole equation is that you get your percentage of money based on how much music you have in the whole system and how much it's getting played. So in some kind of bizarre, opaque equation, which interestingly on this very much related to this discussion, SoundCloud is launching a new streaming platform on April 1st, which is threatening to really sort of destabilize in very good ways the whole Spotify model, hopefully, because I mean SoundCloud is a known entity, and they're going to be launching a streaming platform that is based on the artists get paid based on the number of streams that artist gets, which seems like it obvious, but is not the way the streaming platforms work currently. They're skewed. The way they work currently with the agreements with the big three record companies is they're skewed towards giving their money to those companies, which neither benefits independent artists nor in many cases the legacy artists that we hear about making all this money. They're not all making that much money, actually. Some of these legacy artists from the 60s, their stuff gets streamed a lot on Spotify, but it's the big three companies that are sucking up all the money.
Well, and also, isn't there another side issue to all this is that don't some of these big companies have the ability to kind of fudge the numbers?
Well, yeah, right. I mean, do we trust Spotify to tell us how much they're making, how much they're paying out? I mean, it's all this just a big shell game anyway. You know how different, how much. I mean, it's the same bunch of venture capitalists, oligarchs from Russia, Norway, and New York who own, who are invested in Spotify as who are invested in Apple and Microsoft and Facebook. I mean, it's it's just this idea that Spotify is losing money. I mean, it's nonsense. They're set up to lose money. They're a vulture capitalist entity set up to function only on constant Ponzi scheme investment in order so that when they grow big enough to destroy the industry that they're profiting from, then they can say, hey, we make the rules now. We're the only game in town, just like Amazon.
Yeah,
they're
well,
the
that's
same.
exactly. I mean, you just described Amazon's model to a T. We're going to
Yeah,
take a loss because we got the capital flowing in. So we're going to take a loss, take a loss, take a loss until we gobble up everybody else. Then we rule.
yeah, and with every loss they take, that's another untold numbers of musicians and artists of all kinds who are out of work.
Well, what do you think the fix for this is? I mean, do you think that? I mean, obviously, actions like this are a good step, trying to get Spotify to compensate artists more fairly. Um, I think it's going to take someone knocking them off their throne, so to speak. Like it's going to take a real valid competitor, and maybe this SoundCloud thing will be that. I mean, maybe I don't know. And correct me if I'm wrong, but out of all these entities, it's kind of seems like the better ones are SoundCloud and Bandcamp as far as actually looking out for artists and being a little better. Is that correct, or am I missing something?
I mean, as I understand it, and I'm not an expert on these particular corporations, although I'm very familiar with the platforms. But as I understand it, Bandcamp and is a very much a for-profit corporation, and they make a lot of profit, and they make a lot more profit now that they have increased their percentage that they take on everything they're doing. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're operating on the model of profiting from your sales, kind of like So this is very different from the model that Spotify is operating on, because Spotify is, I mean, not Spotify, SoundCloud is operating on. SoundCloud is operating on the model of you pay for their service, and then they give you a service. So they're not actually planning on profiting any extra from this streaming platform they're setting up for their artists. So to be to be an artist on SoundCloud, to have a SoundCloud account for like unlimited, putting up your songs on SoundCloud, your material on SoundCloud, it costs somewhere, what is it, like $100 a year or so, right? So, and many people might think, oh, that seems expensive, given that, you can put up your videos on YouTube for free, and all this other platforms like Facebook, etc. But the difference is that SoundCloud is not taking your data and profiting from it. It's not that kind of entity. It's, I believe, even actually not even a for-profit corporation. I'm not sure. I think it's a non-profit. It's based in Germany. They're very conscious about data privacy, and they're not doing the whole Facebook, Spotify model. It's a very different model. So, it's yeah. I mean, I think actually it was Steve. What's this? Steve Wozniak, who said if Facebook were actually charging for their services, they'd be charging like $100 a month. And then, of course, nobody would be paying for them, so then they wouldn't be worth $100 a month. But, their model is to be free and then to make huge amounts of money off of what they could do with your data, and of course, they're one of the biggest corporations in the world. So clearly their model works. But SoundCloud,
they should be paying us $100 a month.
Well,
that's what should be happening. They should be paying us $100 a month for all the data that they're getting.
Yeah, if they did that, then they'd be worth exactly about nothing, I guess. But that's what they should be worth.
They'd actually still make money. I mean, I think they could give us a cut of it, and they'd still make plenty of money, and it would still be pretty unethical what they're doing. But at least we'd be in on the agreement a little bit. At least there'd be that.
They could give us $95 a month.
There you go. And then So real quick to just kind of reiterate it here. These are the actions going on today. You can learn more at unionofmusicians.org. That's unionofmusicians.org. Here's the cities where these actions are going on today: Atlanta, Birmingham. And by the way, some people in the chat were confirming, yes, they do mean Birmingham, Michigan, which is a town in Michigan. Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Los Angeles, Miami, Nashville, New York, San Francisco, Antwerp, Belgium, Berlin, Germany, Oslo, Norway, Paris, France, all kinds of places all over the world. And you can learn more about it at unionofmusicians.org. And it is going on today.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your